one of our staffers said to me when he was filling out the survey, he said, "Have you looked at Frank's survey? Do you realize that he is not with us on banning gays in the National Guard in Ohio?" I was not aware of that. We had asked him to come to one of our freedom banquets and lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance of the flag. And so I thought, no, I was not aware of that. That's a problem. One of the things that we do, you'll see on the table, is the presentation of the Ten Commandments at the State House. We've been doing it since 2003. Over 200 legislators have received a framed copy of the Ten Commandments for hanging in their office. It's just a simple offer to any legislator, Democrat, Republican, doesn't matter. Had over 200 over the years accepted. Mr. LaRose is not one. Now what does that represent to you, the Ten Commandments? We talked about a point of order before we started today, and I'm glad that that gentleman, whoever they were, pointed that out to Jim.
That's our foundation.
That's right. That's right. As Mr. Santorum has been saying, our freedoms don't come from government. They come from God. And before we pledge allegiance to the flag, we recognize our deity. Now, the Ten Commandments have been under assault by the ACLU, by liberal groups, by atheists, and have been trying to redefine America and as who she is and what her founding is. So, when the Ten Commandments in Adams County was being stripped from the schoolyard, you remember the Ten Commandment case in Adams County? Yeah. The ministerium there simply presented a beautiful granite engraved marker of the Ten Commandments, the Justinian Code, and the Mayflower Compact. It was a multi-theme granite stone that was presented for the courtyard of the new high school that was built. The ACLU always finds one village idiot to come forward and say that they object.
Yeah, that's right.
Then they use that as a platform to start stripping our constitutional rights. Well, that case went all the way to the Supreme Court, and the appeals court sided with the local liberal court to have it taken away, and the Supreme Court would not hear the case. Do you know where that granite stone ended up? Pastor Ken Johnson of the Methodist Church of the Ten Commandments for the Ministerium got a call from Israel. And a little town in Israel wanted that for their town square. And that's where it got carted off to and shipped out to, is in Israel. Now, I find it to be interesting. It's a very simple gesture to hang those Ten Commandments on your wall as a legislator. Very simple gesture. But it means so much, doesn't it?
Yes.
So I started adding these things up. And then also, pick up this piece of paper. This is called the Founding of American Documents Bill. Now, of all the things, now, Homer, you were in superintendent of schools. In your years, sir, how many mandates came down from the state? Too many to count.
Too many to count.
Too many to count.
But I'm proud to say that we were one of the last school systems in the state that handed out the Gideon Bible.
Well, thank you. You know, my first Bible, I was raised in the Catholic Church. And just whatever reason, in our home, we had a Catholic missal or prayer missal, but we did not have a Bible. So the first copy of the scriptures I ever received was in a public school. And I remember, I remember that. It was in the 5th grade. I grew up in Stowe. In fact, I had a little bit of religious zeal back then, because I remember a classmate taking his and throwing it in the trash. I walked over, I picked it up and gave it back to him. I said, "This is God's word. You don't do that."
Good for you. Good for you.
The Founding of American Documents Bill is to require that Ohio schools teach the U.S. Constitution with an emphasis on the Bill of Rights, the Declaration of Independence, the Ohio Constitution, the Northwest Ordinance, the Federalist Papers, and the Anti-Federalist Papers. It's taken me 10 years to get this through the legislature. We're almost there, but we're not done yet. It's in conference committee. 2 versions were presented, one in the Senate, Senate Bill 165, and then over in the House. And consequently, my sponsor in the House, his version was a little different. That was State Representative John Adams. Gotta love that. Larry Oboff, in fact, is actually State Senator Tim Grindell. We had to introduce to the Senate. Tim, as you know, got an appointment to a judgeship, so we relayed it to Larry Oboff. Larry's been doing a good job with it. But we're not there yet. It's in conference committee. Got a call this week and saying, John said if it doesn't include requirements for testing, we'll kill the bill. I'm like, what are you doing? I can't leave you people alone for 5 minutes down there is what I'm thinking. So anyways, God actually, you know, the real John Adams he was a piece of work too. You know that, right? The real John Adams was at times difficult. In fact, it was Ben Franklin that had to set him straight in France. Said, you know, you're really not helping over here. We need the French. And he sent him on. But anyways, our John Adams is a little bit like that, but he's right in this instance. In conference committee, you have to make them blink a little bit. The Senate body is the weaker chamber, you know that, right? Both on the federal level and on the state house level. And they don't like to really take a stand on anything. So John's kind of pushing it a little bit, but it worked. Larry says, let me see what I can do. I'll go back to the members. They didn't want what they would consider a mandate, requirement, that this be taught in Ohio schools. Because in most districts, it's not. Some districts, it is. Some of them have a very good American government and civics history standards in their local high school. And what it does is, from the 9th to the 12th grades, requires that these documents are taught in American government and history classes. But in recent years, polling indicates that our young people are not receiving instruction in these founding documents. In fact, you wonder why, in 2008, why young people could vote for an avowed socialist, Barack Hussein Obama. It's because the liberals knew for years, if you want to change the definition of America, grab control of the schools. They've been doing it. A textbook called We the People that the National Education Association produced has so watered down the founding documents that the founders wouldn't recognize their own writ. That is not how we're going to teach our young people about our representative republic and how it works. And that's why we're trending towards socialism in this country, and that's why you and I see our freedoms being eroded every day. So if we're going to grab and control again, it starts in the classroom. So of all the mandates that they mandate, you would think that'd be simple, wouldn't you? How many are in agreement with that? Tea Party groups across this state said the same thing. We're against mandates, government doing, but if anything we ought to require is the instruction of the founding documents of this country in the classroom.
Sure.
Mr. LaRose told me that he wasn't for that. He was one of those in the Senate that Larry had a difficult time convincing that we should require this instruction in the classroom. There's no good answer for that, Frank. I'm sorry. I'm a little shocked, to be honest with you. He's speaking at a Tea Party group. There's a lot of people we should have speaking, but let's not have posers up there. Start vetting these people. Start holding them accountable.
Let him know why he's not speaking.
Yeah. And I don't know where you were on the collective bargaining reform. You know, and what went on there. That's another issue a little bit outside our wheelhouse. That whole thing was an interesting scenario of how all that went down. And you know, the governor's still recovering from that. But these are the kinds of things that happen at the state level and the competition between these politicals. Why am I saying this? Because you folks need to know the truth. And when you know the truth, then you'll be able to hold them accountable. Governor Kasich campaigned on collective bargaining reform, but he did not want SB 5. Him and Bill Batchelder were working in cooperation of what the governor's agenda was to move it through the House. How does Senate Bill 5, number 5, ladies and gentlemen, the Senate, I can tell you, working down there 10 years, never does anything quickly or aggressively. How does Senate Bill 5, that includes the collective bargaining reform up and down the line, including police and fire, which is, we can see what was the effect of that now, was meant to be a firebomb, a stink bomb to the early days of the Case administration. There are thoughts as to why that happened. Why was that introduced in the Senate? Why did it go down? I went to the governor's people, I said, this couldn't have been your idea. I know you wanted to collect the bargaining reform, but you would have broken it up. Why give it one big fat moving target to eventually be referendum on the ballot? You saw the outcome. Because there was competing political interests who don't want, there are Republicans who don't want cases to continue. They may want to be governor in the near future. You connect the dots and fill in the blanks. And these are the people controlling the Ohio Senate currently. We can't get the heartbeat bill passed right now. These people don't want to take a stand on that. I can't get banning on human cloning done because they bowed to Ohio State University and Case Western Reserve and Cincinnati Children's. They genuflected Ohio State. These people do not want common sense restriction on banning human cloning and banning animal-human hybrid. These are outrageous forms of human experimentation, and I can't get that through. These are so-called people that say, we're pro-life. Let's really vet them, folks. Let's see what's going on down there. Because if we're not going to stand on these issues, start electing folks that do on these issues. Now, if we can't in this General Assembly get the Founding of American Documents bill through, that's it. We've moved to this point. If you got John Kasich's in support of it, Bill Batchelor's in support of it, it passed both chambers, it's in the conference committee, they better get it done.
What do you suggest we do?
Yes.
I think that you need to pay attention to each and every issue. You need to call that legislator and hold them accountable to that specific issue.
Which one's holding it up?
The Founding of American Documents bill?
Yeah.
Right now, I would call your state senator and urge them to support the Founding of American Documents bill. Larry's going to be going around and asking them to accept the conference report that they've come up with, and it will require testing. It's Senate Bill 165. You call and tell them. So I would go beyond, call Senate leadership. Call Senate leadership, Senator Niehaus. Larry is already doing this. So if you're in Larry's district, no sense calling his office.
Right.
Those around, call LaRose's office. By the way, call LaRose. Here's a guy that's going to come to the Tea Party meeting. You know, I haven't had a conversation. This is a guy, I mean, he's just all out there shaking hands and everything when he was running. He doesn't pay us the time of day right now. Where's his interest right now? Interesting, interesting. And when they're elected, they don't have to face election every 2 years in the Senate. You know that. They're in for 4 years. So once they get in, just forget about your fool. I've had this happen. It gets really frustrating, folks. And so just hold them accountable back in the home district, make them uncomfortable about it, make them think about it. Because there's somebody paying for their vote, there's somebody paying for their influence. Find out who that is. You follow what I'm saying to you? It's different with each and every legislator. Yeah. Okay. I think you have to follow. So what I've said today about Frank is something that you're going to have to look to specifically and saying, why weren't you in support of? He voted for it in the Senate, but only after it did not include the requirements of the Founding of American Documents bill. So they did vote on it. He'll say, well, I voted on it. But Senator, when it has the requirement, we need you to support that now with a concurrence vote out of the conference committee. This is where the rubber meets the road. Because if this died, it's going to be because of gentlemen like that in the Senate. Remember, Republicans hold the majority in the Senate. Whose fault is it if it doesn't get done? Hello?
Yours.
That's right. It's their fault. And it has to get done in the next 2 weeks to be implemented in the next school year. But we really mean this. Bill Batchelor has done what he can do. The sponsors of the bill have done what they can do. It is that mushy middle that we have to hold accountable. But that's where you're in a tug of war of what's going on. Because the Senate district, you say, why is the Senate so weak? Why are some House members so conservative? Well, because they come from a conservative district. I loved going down to Cincinnati last year when there was a political debate, and it was Shannon Jones and Michelle Schneider, and they, their profile is they vote pretty conservatively, but they're in conservative districts, okay? And it was Phil Heimlich, and it was, I kind of call it hardball with Phil Heimlich. Phil actually just hit them both between the eyes. Said to Shannon Jones, said, Shannon, you supported, you received a $100,000 contribution from First Energy, a group that's not in your district, and you helped them pass major legislation. What say ye? Wow, that wasn't on the script. Michelle Schneider voted for a tax increase under the Taft, administration. She had no comeback to that. She voted for an increase of taxes. And I'm like, wow, that guy needs to be our moderator, our next candidate for him. And it wasn't on the script, and he just really hit them both. And then he challenged them both, said, well, you're for this, but it's like, isn't that true because your district is conservative? Ladies and gentlemen, look for legislators that are statesmen and stateswomen. Do you follow what I'm saying to you? I'm talking about people who stand for courage, stand for issues, not because, let's see if 51% of the people in my district believe in this. So let's make sure these people really believe what we're talking about. Look them in the eye. If they look you back, you can tell and shake it, shake their hand and ask them specifically. They start looking away. Well, let me give you that explanation. Then you're going to know that they're not really with you on a specific issue. You see what I'm saying? So if we're going to turn it around, that's what we need to do. Why am I saying that? I don't say this to every group. I'm saying it to you because you folks are the hardcore. You're the hardcore of what's happening in this Tea Party group. Jim and Lisa have done a great job. They've kept this group together going in to the most important election of our time. And this is not going to be... A couple of things we're doing on the... I'll just give you a brief legislative... Obviously, the Founding American Documents Bill, banning human cloning, banning animal-human hybrid. I've been working on that one for 8 years. I'll tell you something. Representative Andy Thompson, Representative Terry Johnson. Note those names right now. They're downstate. I'm going to tell you something. Andy Thompson won in a very narrow district. He sat in an interested party meeting, and across the table was Dr. Kniss, Ohio State University, Case Western Reserve, Cincinnati Children's, the vice president of Ohio State University. She kept quiet up to the point in which she said, we are ready to invest $283 million in a medical research facility at Ohio State, and this legislation, we don't want it because it will cloud the environment of what we're trying to achieve. Well, that was a message to every other legislator in the room, don't mess with Ohio State. These two gentlemen held their ground and said, we are not amending banning human cloning. That bill is not going to be gutted. We're going to hold firm. I look back and I'm like, we need a lot more like you.
What's their names again?
Representative Andy Thompson and Representative Terry Johnson. And those two men held firm. Andy Thompson, he's on a thin razor of how he got elected this last session. All it takes is for Ohio State to write a few checks against his opponent either way, and he's going to be up against it. You need men and women of courage. You need men and women who stand strong in what they believe in. These are good, strong conservatives.
Is this a high-quality organization that did the study that they concluded that rock music causes racism?
Well, I'm sorry, I don't know what you're referring to.
Ohio State.
Oh, yeah.
Spent a lot of money.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's the quality organization.
Yeah. That's right. I've been doing battle with them for 8 years, and in fact, someone told me, in fact, how our organization got involved with this is because other pro-life groups, this shall go unnamed, who should have taken this issue from the beginning, weren't leading the charge on this one. So I started working with the Family Research Council, and Dr. David Prentice of Indiana State University has come in 8 years in a row, God bless him, on his own expense to give expert testimony saying that adult stem cells, iPS lines, are proven forms of medical research and are showing so much advancement. And even Dr. Kaniss said 2 years ago, science is moving beyond the need of destroying human embryos for research. It's shown no promise that iPS lines and adult stem cells are the preferred pursuit of research. I'm like, if that's the case, why won't you allow us to pass this common sense legislation that bans animal-human clones and bans destruction of human embryo and bans human cloning? They just don't want to be told no. There's no governing body. So very specifically and succinctly, we offered the legislation. We asked for their input to help draft the legislation, and they've come forward with nothing constructive, but just to obstruct and to find those legislators who they can influence, who will keep it all bottled up. That is a battle for the dignity of man in the research lab. Think about it. Dr. Richard Land of the Southern Baptist Conference said that this is the pro-life battle of our time a few years ago. And it seems something off the table now with all the other things that we're dealing with. But when you get a hold of something, you've been given a mission, you got to see it through to the end. We get no funding for this. I can't tell you how many volunteer hours I've put into this. And working with other groups like Cincinnati Right to Life and the Family Research Council and Center for Bioethical Reform here in Ohio. Groups that are long pressed on these kinds of issues and keep them going so that we might have a victory here in Ohio, but it's going to be difficult when you have these folks who are in the middle and squishing. We have an opportunity this year, just as we made changes on the State Central Committee with Jim Winning and Sharon Ray and others who are going to be bringing conservatives in, this is going to mean a lot. Because in the future, they'll be recruiting candidates who are more conservative in their core. Not just someone who has money that can run and win a race. How many times have we heard that? But I can tell you that grassroots will beat money every time. But if we join together. That's why they fear the Tea Party meeting. That's why they had those opposing research photographers that were in here when Jim Nacy was here, wanted to get him to say something that they could use and also to catch you, to make you look in an embarrassing moment of someone coming in. They may even send someone in to say something racist or outrageous that's not part of your group. So the gentleman's right in saying, who were these folks and what were they doing here? And you do have the right, outside of your own videographer, to say, we're not going to take video, please turn off your video machines, we're not doing that today. You have the executive discretion to do that, sir. And it has nothing to do about freedom of speech. It talks about, they're coming in and they're out to get you. So be aware of that. That's exactly what's going on. So as you have some politicals come in. Has Josh Mandel been scheduled to come in this year?
Not yet.
But when he is, I'm sure that you're going to, let me know, by the way, and I'll help you spread the word on that.
All right.
To get folks here. They're going to be doing that with Josh as well. They already have.
Very hazardous for their people.
Yeah. Let me talk about yesterday for a minute, what happened in Columbus. The sister was sharing about up in Cleveland with the Freedom of Religious rally. This is not just a Catholic issue. This is a religious liberty issue. I joined with about 400 faithful in front of the federal building in Columbus. I was told that in Cincinnati was another 400. These are the ones we know about, also in Youngstown and then of course in Cleveland, all across the country.
139.
139?
That's what they said the rally.
Wow.
139 cities.
Wonderful. It was powerful. But not much was mentioned in the media down in Columbus. We put out a press release, we did all this. But what was in the news yesterday? Who controlled the narrative in the news yesterday? Mr. Obama did. He chose to highlight a shooting in Florida and to bring up race to cloud what was happening all across the country with the Religious Freedom Rally, which he knew was an indictment against his Obamacare, and the unconstitutional mandate that Catholic or religious institutions under Obamacare have to provide abortifacients, birth control, and abortion services. This is an outrage. And I am seeing Catholic people for the first time stand up, and I was raised in the Catholic Church. It's good to see them standing up and making a stand. And it's not because they don't want to, as you said, you normally do not hear it from yeah, that's right, well, it's not the priest, or trying to think of the right terminology, the podium, but you don't normally hear it in a Sunday morning service. I do remember growing up in the Catholic Church in the early 70s, and they were talking about, it was 1972, warning us about abortion was going to be legalized, and what we need to do, pray and write. And unfortunately, then the Supreme Court took away from the right of the people to establish their own laws and the 10th Amendment in their own states. And again, our young people wouldn't know about that because they wouldn't have learned about the 10th Amendment. You see how it all fits together? And so this is why what we do is important. And by the way, we wouldn't have gotten the Founding of American Documents bill this far if it had not been for groups like this. The Tea Party was a tide that lifted all boats. And so something that we've been struggling with for a while, I've been working on an issue 10, 12 years down at the State House. And this is the best opportunity that we have. You can understand why I'm a little frustrated with some weak members. And you know, again, you know, if Frank straightens out, that's great. We'll be right behind him. I'll help you out. But if they step out of line, I'm not beholden to any, you understand what I'm saying? I'm not beholden to the Republican Party. I'm not beholden to any one candidate. We're an equal opportunity offender, the Ohio Christian Alliance is. We took on Bob Taft, we took on Strickland, and we'll take on Kasich if he steps out. I get calls every once in a while from their office alerting me to some things they think we might weigh in on. They're a little nervous about that. That's good. I'm not in line for a governor's appointment. Do you understand what I'm saying to you?
Yeah.
I don't have a state pension plan. If you saw my S-Corp filing from last year, you'll say, how in the world, what are you doing? That's what my accountant said. You didn't make any money last year. That's right. We didn't. But we got a lot done. And that's why I'm saying when we're on the threshold and we're almost going to get this done, I'm not about to tolerate rhinos. Somebody that poses themselves to be one thing and comes to a Tea Party gathering and rah-rah meeting. People don't even really know how they've been legislating down at the State House or what's been happening behind the scenes. How conservative are you? You better have a good reason. And if you really feel that way, then step up to the podium and tell us why. Okay, you don't want a mandate. Let's be consistent about it. But really, you don't want a mandate that our kids learn this? You can't argue for that? I mean, look, folks who don't want mandates support that one. Let's be consistent here. They support that one because they know what it means. If anything, you and I pay the taxes for these public schools. I don't want the little socialists to be turned out every single year that are taking my freedoms away. I want to give these kids the opportunity to understand how this representative republic works. I want them to understand the Constitution. We had a great dialogue in the Education Committee. One of the minority members said, what about the other 16 amendments? Are you going to, is this an effort to not teach on women's suffrage or the abolition of slavery? Of course, that was never the intent of this legislation. I said, no. In fact, I asked John Adams, I said, John, take his amendment. I checked with some very conservative lobbyists who have been with us on this. And I said, well, Barry, what do you think? He said, I think it's a reasonable amendment. And all subsequent amendments. The 10th Amendment and the Bill of Rights and all subsequent amendments. Nothing wrong with that. Let's have a dialogue even with our Democratic friends.